The 5 expedited DNA test results for my daughter's 1-month birthday came in one after another. Paternity confirmed. I allowed myself a thin smile and told the driver to change course for the wellness retreat. On the way, I messaged my executive assistant, David Chun. Notify the legal department. Prepare the asset transfer agreements as per my previous instructions. David acknowledged immediately. When I arrived at the retreat, I was told the security cameras were malfunctioning again. I reflexively opened the app for the private camera I'd installed in the suite. On the screen, my wife, Olivia Vance, looked radiant. Standing by the bed, holding a baby, was a man in the retreat's uniform. It was her executive assistant, Leo Hayes. Olivia's face was lit with excitement. Did the paternity results come in? Julian Caldwell is so paranoid, Leo sneered. Insists on being in the delivery room and still needs a test. He placed the baby he was holding into the custom-built crib I'd ordered, then picked up my biological daughter. They're in. He used 5 different labs. It's his child, there's no doubt, Olivia said. Now, I'm sending this other baby, the one who served her purpose, away. Send her far away, Leo added. Make sure she never has a chance of being found. I closed the app and motioned for my bodyguard to step forward. In a moment, I'm going to grab the baby, I said quietly. You take him down. Trying to swap an illegitimate child for my daughter? It seemed the Vance family had enjoyed their good fortune for long enough. The wellness retreat was a Vance family enterprise. In the month Olivia had been here, the official cameras had failed 3 times. The nurse mentioned they'd gone down a few times before that, too. I'd worried the Vances might try to swap the infants after the DNA results were confirmed, so I'd installed a micro camera I could control remotely. I never expected the person orchestrating the switch would be my own wife. And I couldn't figure out when this other baby, the one I just tested, had been brought into her room. The nurse was from my grandmother's staff at the estate, and she watched Olivia almost 24/7. As I approached the suite, the door opened, and Leo emerged, holding my daughter. I pocketed my phone, gave my bodyguard a sharp nod, and stepped back. The second the door was ajar, I lunged forward and snatched the baby from his arms. My bodyguard moved with clean efficiency, neutralizing Leo and shutting the door behind us. $50,000 a month for his services was money well spent. I looked down at the tiny bundle in my arms, my daughter, and ordered in a low voice, "Dump Mr. Hayes in a corner of the underground garage. Put a man on him. Make sure he doesn't try to leave the country." The bodyguard nodded and dragged the unconscious Leo away. I gently touched my daughter's cheek, then turned and headed for the elevators. Olivia shutting down the retreat security systems had certainly made things easier for me. Back in the car, both David Chun and my driver, Peterson, stared at me. "To the Cambridge Forensics Lab," I said, my brow furrowed. Peterson immediately started the car and pulled out of the garage. David leaned forward, his eyes on the infant in my arms. "Was the young miss switched?" he asked hesitantly. "There's another one in the room. I need to run one more test to be certain. I want you to arrange for someone to get a sample from the child with Olivia, and get biological samples from her assistant, Leo Hayes. Run a test on them, too." David's eyes widened, but he held his tongue. I knew what he wanted to ask, but I didn't have the answers myself yet. Olivia's revulsion toward our daughter had never seemed like simple resentment for being forced into a marriage with me. Our family's union was a merger, a business transaction. A child was the bond that sealed the deal. The plan had been 2 children, one to carry each family name, regardless of gender. Both families would provide identical assets for each child, company shares, real estate, trust fund disbursements. But when our daughter was born, the entire Vance clan had worn poorly disguised looks of disappointment. I saw right through them. The designated heir to the Vance fortune had been Olivia's older brother, Harrison. Unfortunately, he'd been sabotaged by a cousin during a car race and was now in a vegetative state. Old man Vance, in a rage, had purged that branch of the family from the company and started grooming Olivia. She was the best of a bad bunch. To secure the Vance legacy and find a powerful ally for Olivia, her grandfather had dredged up some century-old marriage pact between our families and proposed a merger. We Caldwells have plenty of sons. My father's generation, 3 brothers and a sister, all wanted nothing to do with inheriting the family business. They hated my grandfather's iron-fisted control. In my generation, my 3 older cousins and 2 younger ones felt the same way. I never wanted the business either. My own brother is 19 years my junior, only 9 years old now. Waiting for him would take longer than waiting for my daughter to grow up. Watching my cousins go off to West Point or medical school, I secretly changed my college major to mathematics. But my grandfather was a step ahead. He had to change back to finance and economics. The day my acceptance letter arrived, he shoved me into a junior position at corporate headquarters. To rebel against his tyranny, Every time he mentioned the marriage alliance, I'd conveniently fall ill, the kind of ill that kept me bedridden. That went on until Olivia's grandfather showed up at our estate. My grandfather slammed his fist on the table and declared that unless I was cremated, I was getting married. I knew what he was after, the Vance family's tech company and their artisanal distillery. Olivia didn't like me, and I didn't like her. Affection is a rare commodity in these kinds of mergers. I assumed she would honor the agreement, produce 2 heirs, then we could divorce. Instead, she planted a time bomb. The 2 new expedited DNA results arrived on my desk at 4 p.m. The child Olivia had given birth to was her and Leo Hayes' illegitimate daughter. The one Leo had been about to carry away was my and Olivia's biological daughter, born via surrogate. I looked down at the sleeping infant in my arms. Put a tail on Olivia. I want to know her every move, I told David. And I want you to dig into everything she and Leo have been doing at Vance Holdings. Find evidence of embezzlement or asset stripping. Tell legal to prepare for a divorce and a lawsuit for damages. I paused, my voice hardening. And I'm supposed to have another child. A son. Find him. Spare no expense. David nodded, his face a mask of shock as he read the lab reports. How is this even possible? For your wife to use a surrogate, wouldn't she have needed your cooperation? I shot him a look, barely containing my anger. She was plotting this from the beginning. When you're that determined, you find ways to operate right under someone's nose. David quickly wiped the expression from his face and started making calls. I touched my daughter's soft cheek again. The memory of Olivia's face, twisted with disgust as she prepared to send her own child away, sent a wave of cold fury through me. It wasn't just disgust in her eyes, it was pure hatred. Was she angry that I'd agreed to the marriage, separating her from Leo? The person she should hate is her own grandfather. I wasn't the one who forced this deal. What did my daughter do to deserve this? Hated by her own mother from the moment she was born, nearly cast away like trash. When I arrived back at the family estate in Greenwich, my grandfather was inspecting the gifts he'd prepared for his great-granddaughter. Seeing me walk in holding the baby, his face darkened. What is the meaning of this? Lily is barely a month old. Why did you bring her back like this? Where's the nurse? His voice boomed, startling the tiny bundle in my arms. Her little mouth trembled, her brow furrowed, and she looked ready to cry. Panic flared in my chest. Maria, I called out, rushing toward the kitchen. Lily's about to cry. Can you help? My grandfather followed, his cane thudding against the polished floor. Let me see, Maria said, coming from the kitchen. She carefully took Lily from my arms. The little miss is probably just hungry. It's a good thing we have formula in bottles here. I'll get one ready right away. She started cooing softly to Lily and turned away. I let out a breath of relief and turned to help my grandfather. Olivia's assistant brought another baby today. He was going to swap her for Lily. My grandfather's eyebrows shot up. He stared at me intently. Explain. Running a DNA test at 1 month was a clause written into our prenuptial agreement. It means the Caldwell family has its heir, I said, but I'm divorcing Olivia. There's another daughter at the retreat. Her father is Olivia's assistant, Leo Hayes. I explained everything, forwarding him the video from the suite and the latest lab results. After reviewing the evidence, my grandfather struck the floor several times with his dragon-headed cane. All of old man Vance's careful planning, he sneered, utterly wasted on that girl. Once you have all the evidence, I'll have a word with him. We'll see if he honors the agreement and signs over the shares in the companies we funded, or if he wants to burn everything to the ground. Whichever he chooses, you be ready to swallow the Vance family whole. After being fed and changed, Lily was asleep again. I stood by her crib for a moment, then took a couple of pictures with my phone. I sent a message to the head of my investment division. Have the team prepare all documents on Golden Pear Distillery and Apex Innovations. We're preparing for an acquisition. Also, draw up a plan for a partition buyout of Vance Holdings. I'm giving you 1 week. 3 years ago, Olivia's brother, Harrison, was critically injured in a racing accident, sabotaged by a cousin. Harrison was the brilliant heir old man Vance had chosen. With him out of the picture, the rest of the worthless cousins began a vicious power struggle. They hired people to post anonymous tips online, claiming several of the Vance family's liquor brands contain carcinogens. Olivia seized the opportunity, buying trending topics to amplify the scandal. Regulators launched an investigation, forcing the distillery to halt production. Distributors demanded refunds and canceled contracts. Vance Holdings' cash flow dried up overnight. At the same time, Apex Innovations, a subsidiary, was at a critical phase in developing its automated agricultural robotics. Our family agreed to the marriage alliance, not out of respect for her grandfather, but for the potential profit. The Caldwell family injected $200 million for a 16% stake in Apex Innovations. In return, Olivia successfully purged her uncle's families from the corporate headquarters and became her grandfather's favorite successor. Before the wedding, our families signed the merger agreement. We were to have 2 children, one for each family name, and both families would provide for them equally. Even a divorce was not supposed to affect our business partnership or the children's inheritance. But Olivia had violated the contract. Seething, I returned to our marital home alone. A message came from the bodyguard watching Leo. Mr. Hayes woke up. He didn't call the police. Made several other calls instead. I was too far away to hear everything, just fragments like the baby, the sample. I'll file the police report myself. You keep your eye on him. I texted back. Just then, Olivia called, her voice thick with barely suppressed rage. Julian, where are you? I pinched the bridge of my nose, instinctively holding the phone away from my ear. You should stay another week. My grandmother says that recovering from a C-section takes longer. It's better for your long-term health. Olivia wasn't having it. I'm taking our daughter and going to my parents' house now, she snapped. We can sign the asset transfer in 2 weeks. And we still need to draw lots to decide which family name the first child takes. She hung up without so much as a goodbye. I stared at the dark screen of my phone and let out a cold laugh. A newborn's features change daily. If she could stall for 2 weeks, she could easily dismiss any questions I might have about the baby's appearance. After all, who keeps running DNA tests on their own child? No one would ever suspect the baby had been switched. Back at home, the bodyguard tailing Olivia sent an update. Her assistant arrived at the Vance estate. The two of them are discussing work in the main parlor. Mr. Hayes gave her a file. I glanced at the time, grabbed the surveillance footage from the retreat, and called the NYPD commissioner directly to file a report. After he reviewed the video, he assured me they would bring Leo Hayes into custody immediately. He may have sold another child of mine, I added. I need him found as soon as possible. I couldn't be sure, but what if? After leaving the commissioner's office, I drove to the Vance estate. If Olivia didn't want me near the child, that's exactly where I was going. Her parents weren't home. Olivia was in the music room with the baby, listening to a piano teacher play. A blissful smile graced her lips, an expression completely different from the one she wore when holding my actual daughter. I leaned against the doorframe, watching. When the piece ended, I spoke, my voice low and menacing. Discharged from the retreat for a whole month, and you go straight to your parents' house. Olivia, are you trying to broadcast to the world that our marriage is a sham? She jumped, instinctively turning to shield the baby's face from me. What are you so afraid of? I asked. If you love it here so much, feel free to stay. Permanently. My face was a cold mask as I turned and walked away. In all our time married, I had never once lost my temper with her. After signing the main prenuptial agreement, we had signed a supplemental spousal agreement. We would divorce after our second child turned 1. Until then, we were forbidden from revealing that our relationship was purely a contract to produce heirs. Olivia ran after me, holding the baby. She cared more than anyone about maintaining the illusion of a happy marriage. The more stable we appeared, the more her grandfather would trust her, and the more power he would give her. She blocked my path, her voice a furious whisper. Julian, what is that supposed to mean? I just finished my postpartum recovery. You don't even bother to pick me and the baby up, and you come here just to throw a tantrum? Do you think you could just walk all over me? Playing dumb, I fixed her with a deep, furrowed gaze. Olivia, if you've forgotten the terms of our spousal agreement, I suggest you review them. I never said I wasn't coming to get you. You're the one who threw a fit and ran off with our daughter. Since you're back at your family's home, you might as well stay until the day the asset transfer is signed. Until I had concrete proof of her affair and knew for sure if another child existed, the sight of her made me sick. I'd had her investigated before our marriage. She had plenty of suitors and admirers, but had chosen none of them, focusing solely on her studies and career. Leo Hayes had been a classmate of hers while studying abroad. He joined Vance Holdings a month after our wedding, one of her many admirers. When their affair started, didn't matter now. The other branches of the Vance family hated Olivia's branch. Her cousins were all plotting to take her down and seize power for themselves. With my daughter missing, Olivia would suspect one of them, not me. At least not for a while. And I wouldn't give her any reason to. Back at my house, I went upstairs, dealt with some work from the office, and then sent a message to David. Leaked the news that Olivia's daughter is illegitimate to that pack of worthless Vance cousins. David replied instantly. Understood. The Vance parasites did not disappoint. As soon as the rumors started, they descended on the wellness retreat, demanding records or caused chaos at Vance Holdings headquarters. Olivia was overwhelmed, and her grandfather was so enraged he was admitted to the hospital. I tapped my fingers on the desk and sent another message to David. Olivia wouldn't have tried something this audacious without a plan that could, at the very least, fend off those idiots in her family. I want a thorough investigation. Focus on her and Leo's offshore accounts. That's the priority. A woman who could conceive of a plan to switch infants was more than capable of draining her family's company dry before making a run for it. After all, she wasn't the originally intended heir. David was fast. In just 4 days, he had the whole story. Olivia wasn't great at business, but she was a genius at scheming against me and her own family. A year into our marriage, she had received a call from Harrison's doctor. Her brother's condition was improving. His cortical activity was increasing. He could wake up at any time. Unwilling to accept that all her sacrifices would be for nothing more than paving the way for Harrison's return, Olivia activated her plan to switch the children and transfer assets. She hadn't physically cheated. The child with Leo was conceived via IVF. The original plan was for a surrogate to carry twins, a boy and a girl. But she had bad luck. Only one of her own embryos had implanted successfully, while the surrogate's 2 embryos both took. If I hadn't caught Leo trying to switch the babies, I probably would have had a fatal accident within a year. The sole heir to the 4th generation of 2 powerful families would have been a child whose true parentage was a secret. The biggest beneficiary would have been Olivia, or perhaps Leo. After Olivia gave birth to her daughter, Leo took their son, my son, from the surrogate. He handed the boy to the surrogate's father, who then sold him thousands of miles away. The sperm source? A condom we had used shortly after we were married. I hadn't even finished reading the report when the detective in charge of Leo's child trafficking case called. My son had been rescued. He was at South Manhattan General, in critical condition. He had been sent away the day after he was born. His immune system was weak, and he had been sold twice more along the way. The traffickers had driven him across the country, but they were heartless. As long as the child was breathing, that was enough for them. The fight to save him lasted over 3 hours. My son, who had suffered febrile seizures, survived. He was moved to the pediatric ICU for observation. The police arranged for me to provide a sample for a paternity test. Compared to his twin sister, who had received the best of everything, my son looked painfully thin and small. The sight was a knife in my gut. The young detective who had led the rescue mission sighed, unable to hide his own distress. When we found him, the buyers had just given him a dose of ibuprofen. They had no intention of taking him to a hospital. We got there just in time, found him, and flew straight back. I pressed my lips together, my voice tight with gratitude. Thank you for finding him in time. I expect you to prosecute Leo Hayes to the fullest extent of the law. This isn't just kidnapping, it's illegal surrogacy and human trafficking. On the way to the hospital, I had already sent all the evidence I had on Leo to the commissioner. The young detective gave a slight, awkward laugh. Rescuing children is our job, sir. As for the suspect, the law will ensure he receives a just sentence. I nodded, saying nothing more. The DNA test was expedited. The results came back around 10 p.m. The boy was, indeed, my biological son with Olivia. My grandfather, Maria, and Arthur arrived together. They stood outside the ICU, looking through the glass at the tiny figure in the incubator, their faces a mixture of heartbreak and rage. My own parents are both professors at Cornell, spending most of their time upstate with my younger brother. Back at the estate, my grandfather smashed 3 glasses in his fury. I rubbed his back, my own anger a cold, hard knot in my stomach. Olivia doesn't know Leo's been arrested yet. I have the divorce papers ready. When are you going to confront her grandfather? He let out a sharp breath, the fire still burning in his eyes. I'm taking our lawyers there tomorrow morning. We spent $200 million to bail out his family, and in return his granddaughter sells our flesh and blood and tries to replace my great-granddaughter with an imposter? Does she think the Caldwell family is a bunch of pushovers? I couldn't help but crack a small smile and continue to soothe him. Old man Vance would probably do anything to keep Olivia out of prison. The family couldn't afford that kind of scandal, especially since he was the one who came begging for this marriage alliance in the first place. After calming my grandfather down, I poured him a fresh cup of tea. Is Harrison Vance about to wake up? I asked casually. He woke up a year ago, my grandfather said grimly. He's been in a rehabilitation clinic in Switzerland. He paused, the realization dawning on him, and his face darkened further. That old fox. He used Olivia as a decoy, getting our family to pave the way for Harrison's return. If he wants to play dirty, then we won't play fair. Aren't those worthless Vance cousins already investigating Olivia's illegitimate child? Let them tear each other apart. If old man Vance survives the fallout, he's lucky. If he doesn't, it's just their own internal family drama. He was truly livid. and his thinking aligned perfectly with mine. We had been played for fools. There was no reason to show her grandfather any consideration. I raised an eyebrow and nodded firmly. After having a late snack with my grandfather, I got a message from the bodyguard watching Olivia. A biological sample was just taken from the daughter with your wife. I put my phone down just as it rang. It was Olivia. I answered, and her voice, dripping with false sweetness that couldn't hide her fury, came through. I heard you were at South Manhattan General today. Who's sick? It seemed Leo's disappearance and my sudden coldness toward the daughter had made her suspicious. I smirked. A child of one of my cousin's old army buddies. I lied smoothly. Get the transfer agreement ready as soon as you can, I continued. I'll come see you and our daughter once I'm less busy. Olivia and Leo had siphoned off a quarter of Vance Holdings' assets, roughly $10 billion. From the moment she took over, they had been working together, secretly bleeding the company dry. I couldn't wait to see how the pack of Vance hyenas would react when they caught the scent of that money. Old man Vance had 3 sons and a daughter, plus several siblings. There were over a dozen grandchildren and grandnephews, all eyeing the massive prize of Vance Holdings. The fact that Olivia had embezzled a fortune right under their noses meant I didn't need to provide much evidence. A few well-placed rumors would be enough for them to muddy the waters themselves. The last round of infighting had left the company severely weakened. Another round would push it to the brink of bankruptcy. What's the old saying? A small leak can sink a great ship. I slept soundly and went to see my son at the hospital first thing in the morning. The inflammation in his lungs was under control. His fever hadn't returned overnight, and he was keeping his formula down. Once I was sure he was stable, I had a chat with my uncle, who's a top surgeon there, and then headed to the office. Before I caught Leo swapping the babies, I never would have imagined Olivia would go through IVF just to have another man's child. I'd heard the process was agonizing. Leo must have been her one true love. Well, losing everything for that love seemed a fitting end to their torrid affair. The police department agreed to my request to wait until my son had recovered before bringing Olivia in for questioning. Since she was still in the postpartum period and the case involved a black market surrogacy ring, the investigation would focus primarily on Leo. He was the one who executed the plan. Back at the office, I finished up my work, glanced at the schedule David handed me, and gave him a quiet instruction. Send the evidence of Leo and Olivia's embezzlement to the Economic Crimes Division, and leak the information to the Vance cousins. Also, tell the investment team to prepare for the acquisition of Golden Pear Distillery and Apex Innovations. For the other subsidiaries of Vance Holdings, tell them to get ready to move on anything we can swallow. David immediately set to work. When the Vance cousins got wind of Olivia's asset stripping, they unleashed their own brands of chaos. It turned out the postpartum retreat had 2 separate surveillance systems. The one Olivia had disabled didn't capture Leo's late-night visits, but the other one did. It also captured my bodyguard taking him down. The genius who had installed the second system, Olivia's cousin Ricky Vance, showed up at my office, practically gloating. Olivia's been cheating on you. If you help me kick her out of the company, I won't tell my grandfather. You two can handle it privately. The last thing I wanted was for him not to tell his grandfather, but he couldn't know that. I put on a grim face, staring at him with my lips pressed into a tight line. Being cheated on was a public humiliation. Even if I didn't care, I had to act like I did to make Ricky feel my conflict. He took the bait. A smug, all-knowing grin spread across his face. I've got some inside info on Olivia, not confirmed yet. Lend me a couple of your guys to do some digging. As soon as I have proof, I'll go straight to my grandfather and get him to let you divorce her. I remained silent. The confidence on Ricky's face began to crumble. He lowered his offer. If not your guys, then just lend me some money. Grandfather cut off my allowance, and my parents docked my trust fund payment by half. I let out a heavy sigh, feigning a difficult decision. I can lend you $10 million, secured against your shares. Ricky owned a 4% stake in Keystone Logistics. He could have easily used real estate to get a bank loan, but that would have been too much trouble. Seeing me relent, his face lit up. A loan against shares? No problem. I'll sign over 2% of my Keystone Logistics stock as collateral. I'll have Olivia out in 3 months tops. A 2% stake in Keystone Logistics was currently valued at around $30 million. I raised an eyebrow and told David to draw up the agreement. 3 months was more than enough time for Vance Holdings to go through bankruptcy proceedings. Ricky was a special kind of talent. With the money in hand, he immediately hired expensive private investigators to dig into Olivia and Leo. In just 3 days, he had proof that Olivia had used IVF to have Leo's child, given birth, and attempted to swap the baby for my own. He also uncovered partial evidence of their embezzlement scheme. Of course, the evidence was there because I wanted him to find it. David was flabbergasted. Are all your high society inheritance battles this insane? I shot him a withering look. The Caldwells aren't like this. Neither are the other major families. The Vances aren't a league of their own. I wish someone would try to challenge me for my position. The first person to step up, I'd hand over the reins in a heartbeat. With tens of millions in annual family trust dividends, I'd have to be crazy to slave away like this. David coughed and wisely shut his mouth. Ricky's big spending spurred the other Vance cousins into action. One by one, they came to me. Within a day, I'd signed 7 more collateral loan agreements, lending out over $50 million. Old man Vance is so shrewd. How'd he end up with a pack of morons for grandsons? David muttered, counting the stock agreements, his lip twitching. This is basically just giving you money. It's better than that, I said, taking a calm sip of my coffee. They're not just giving me money. They're going to help me completely dismantle Vance Holdings. It was their handiwork last time when the liquor brands were exposed for containing carcinogens. Classic, if I can't have it, no one can. Fueled by cash, the Vance cousins' infighting intensified. I took the opportunity to have my lawyers file for divorce, formally denying my paternity of Olivia's twins. The day after the court accepted the case, old man Vance was presented with the evidence of Olivia's embezzlement. He had a massive heart attack on the spot and was rushed to the hospital. My grandfather called as soon as he heard the news. Strike while the iron is hot. Those parasites are pulling in every favor they can to carve up that company. Several other firms are already circling. You need to move fast. A smile touched my lips. Don't worry, grandfather. I'm already in talks with the other major shareholders of Vance Holdings. And old man Vance definitely has a contingency plan. He won't let go until he sees Harrison back in control. I hung up, and a moment later, I received a message from the team I'd sent to Switzerland. Harrison Vance's rehabilitation is progressing well, but he has amnesia. Amnesia isn't brain damage. My gut told me Harrison was playing the fool. In that case, I'd let him keep playing the part while I played the hunter. Old man Vance was being treated at Crestview, the family's private hospital. It's a lot easier to make things happen on your own turf than in a public facility. The disgraced Vance cousins, finally armed with leverage against Olivia, went on a rampage. When the snipe and the clam grapple, the fisherman profits. I didn't have to wait long. The day after old man Vance regained consciousness, he was poisoned. It was Ricky's doing. The old man was rushed back into the emergency room. The entire Vance clan descended on the hospital to await the outcome. When Olivia called, I cleared my schedule and went too. As a son-in-law, my absence would be conspicuous. Olivia looked haggard, a testament to the chaos her cousins had wrought. She hadn't brought the baby. The moment she saw me, her eyes blazed with fury. You're behind this, aren't you? Julian, you disgust me. From the moment you agreed to this marriage, you were just waiting for this day. I looked down at her, my gaze intense. No, Olivia, you were just out of your league. Stealing from your own family wasn't enough for you. You had to come after my family's assets, too. Don't take on a job you're not equipped to handle. The surgery lasted 8 hours. Old man Vance had been poisoned with cyanide. They saved his life, but he remained in a coma and was moved to the ICU. I accompanied Olivia to the hospital director's office to hear the prognosis. As soon as we stepped out, I left her side. No one in the Vance family called the police. But I'm not a Vance. When the detectives took Ricky away, the clamoring Vances fell silent, like chickens with their necks wrong. They stared at Olivia with pure hatred. Olivia sneered, her face dark. Ricky poisoned grandfather. You don't actually think this is just a family dispute, do you? This is attempted murder. The family erupted again. You're no better, one of them screamed, pointing a finger at her. When it comes to crime, don't forget you're not exactly clean yourself. You're not the only one who can call the police. So can we. Ricky's parents made the call. I remembered the evidence David had delivered to the Economic Crimes Division. I paused my retreat and stayed to watch the show. Our prenuptial agreement had penalty clauses. Any marital infidelity would require the guilty party to compensate the other for all financial and emotional damages. That was just for starters. The second clause stated that if the Vance family broke the contract, the Caldwell family had the right to claim a controlling interest in Apex Innovations, plus an entire distillery. If I had been the one to betray Olivia, shares in Caldwell Technologies of an equivalent value would be transferred to her name, and my stake in Apex Innovations would be returned free of charge. My grandfather had trusted Olivia's character too much. The one person in the entire Vance family who seemed least likely to make a mistake had made the most fatal one of all. Olivia was taken into custody. I watched the police car drive away, then called the commissioner. The evidence of Olivia Vance's embezzlement has already been delivered to your Economic Crimes Division. You can now proceed with questioning her about the child trafficking case with Leo Hayes. Your officers just took her into custody. The assets Olivia and Leo had funneled away amounted to nearly a quarter of Vance Holdings' total value. With 2 major felonies against her, neither Harrison nor her comatose grandfather could save her. With Olivia gone and the patriarch in a coma, my artist father-in-law was forced to step in and manage the company. The shareholders wanted nothing to do with him. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I quietly met with several of the more ambitious shareholders, offered them favorable terms, and we began to carve up Vance Holdings together. They already had plans in place from the last round of infighting. The most profitable part of Vance Holdings was still its liquor division. The family had built its empire on ancestral distilling recipes. They had formulas for all sorts of spirits and liqueurs that sounded like they came straight out of a fantasy novel. After that, their most valuable assets were the chain of postpartum retreats and the private hospital. I made a few strategic concessions, taking Keystone Logistics, Apex Innovations, and Golden Pear Distillery for myself. I already held minority stakes in their other businesses anyway. It was a concession in name only. My goal was to secure these assets before Harrison Vance could return and rally the troops. The shareholders were far more decisive than the worthless Vance cousins. While Old Man Vance was still unconscious in the ICU, Vance Holdings was torn to pieces. It took about 2 weeks. Her grandfather woke up after 20 days in a coma. It was a final rally before the end. That night, Harrison secretly returned to the country. The next day, the news broke that the old man had passed away. Olivia, from her holding cell, demanded to see me. I refused. After the funeral, while the entire Vance clan was gathered for the reading of the will, my grandfather and I made our claim. The Vances were stunned. My in-laws' faces were black with rage. My father-in-law pointed a trembling finger at me. "Julian Caldwell, how could you be so callous at a time like this?" I met his gaze calmly. Why couldn't I? Olivia cheated on me and tried to have my son killed. I'm not a saint. I don't forgive and forget. Every member of the Vance family was present. No one knew for sure if the old man had left a will, so no one dared to leave. I helped my grandfather to a seat and calmly produced our prenuptial agreement. My divorce proceedings with Olivia begin in a few days. You would be wise to settle this compensation claim before then. Once the lawsuit is filed, we can petition the court to freeze your assets. Mr. Adler will be here shortly. Mr. Adler was Old Man Vance's personal attorney. He handled all of his private legal matters and was also the head of the legal department at Vance Holdings and a partner at the largest law firm in the city. At the mention of his name, my in-laws were speechless. The other family members who had been about to speak up fell silent. No one knew better than Mr. Adler whether a will existed. Protesting was pointless. Half an hour later, Mr. Adler arrived with 2 associates. He had drafted our marriage contract, so it was only natural that he handle the compensation claim. After his first hospital stay, Old Man Vance had authorized Mr. Adler to manage all matters related to our claim. I wasn't surprised. Harrison's rehabilitation was going well. By sacrificing Apex and the distillery, he could appease my family and prevent us from intervening further. That would have given Harrison enough runway to stabilize Vance Holdings once he took over. Unfortunately, Old Man Vance had misjudged human nature. The same loyal, long-time shareholders he trusted were the ones leading the charge to dismantle the company. They were loyal to Harrison, not Olivia. And Olivia had conspired with an outsider to embezzle company funds, attempting to gut the entire corporation. Old Man Vance was the largest shareholder. They were loyal because he made the money. When that stopped, their loyalty evaporated. Now that he was gone, they had no reason to show any deference to the rest of the family. Mr. Adler wasted no time. He sat down, produced a set of documents signed by the old man, and handed them to my grandfather. "Mr. Caldwell, this is the compensation agreement signed by the chairman." The signing was fully recorded. "The agreement will take effect the moment Mr. Caldwell Jr. signs. My office will cooperate fully in processing the transfer." My grandfather reviewed the documents and passed them to me. "Sign it. Disclose what needs to be disclosed and get the paperwork processed as quickly as possible." I took out my pen and signed. With Mr. Adler's cooperation, the controlling stake in Apex Innovations was transferred to my name, and the assets of Golden Pear Distillery were acquired without a hitch. Just as the ink was drying, Harrison Vance, the man who was supposed to be playing the fool, publicly announced his return. David's face was alight with excitement. He didn't go to the family estate. He's staying at one of his private villas. He brought back the entire team his grandfather had arranged for him. The fight for Vance Holdings isn't over yet. Of course it wasn't. If old man Vance had prepared our compensation agreement in advance, he certainly would have prepared others, especially those concerning Harrison. I was right. The will was read after my grandfather and I left. The majority of his shares in the company went to Harrison. A small portion went to his eldest son. The other two sons and the rest of the grandchildren got nothing. His siblings got even less. His real estate holdings were limited to one villa for each of his three sons. The rest of his commercial properties and investments were placed in a trust, with the profits distributed monthly to his sons' families. Harrison, in a wheelchair, assumed the role of chairman. My father-in-law returned to his quiet life of painting. But with Harrison's return, the shareholders who had been carving up the fractured company only accelerated their efforts. More than a dozen corporations were now circling, picking at the carcass of Vance Holdings. After I updated my grandfather, he remarked thoughtfully, the old man wanted to use those worthless grandsons to sharpen his blade. But the blade was too sharp, and it cut away the last of the family fortune. Go to the hospital and bring the children home. Have Maria look after them both. And stay away from Harrison. The breakup of Vance Holdings has nothing to do with us. I understood. We would profit quietly from the chaos. The war for the remnants of Vance Holdings became a feeding frenzy. The cousin who had started it all 3 years ago by leaking the carcinogen story, Kyle Vance, stayed out of the fight this time. But he was also broke. He only had a 2% stake left in the Serenity postpartum retreats, half of which he'd already signed over to me. Now, he was back in my office. The other half was about to be mine. But I couldn't agree too quickly. After Kyle rambled on for a while, and I remained silent, his bravado faded. Is there a problem, Julian? The fruit liqueurs from Golden Pear are perfectly fine. The exposé back then only targeted the distilleries that actually had issues. The other distilleries were indeed problematic, but they were run by distant relatives who pocketed most of the profits. As a direct grandson with nothing to his name, Kyle was naturally resentful. He was also the one who'd orchestrated Harrison's accident. His father was even more useless than mine, a gambling addict who spent half the year in Macau. Old man Vance knew his third son's character. He'd only given him the villa they lived in and nothing else, and his monthly allowance was half that of the other brothers. Kyle was the poorest of the lot, and a gambler himself. I sighed, feigning difficulty. To be honest with you, Kyle, I'm short on cash myself. As soon as the employees at the distillery heard there was a new owner, dozens of them quit. The production lines are outdated. I've had to pour most of the company's liquid capital into getting the place back up and running. You're asking for $10 million, and I just don't have it. Kyle's calculating eyes darted back and forth. A grin spread across his face. I still have 1% of Serenity. I'll use that as collateral. I only need $5 million. A friend is giving me a discount. He meant a discount on buying trending topics online. A discount was good. A fire sale was even better. I pursed my lips, pretending to think it over for a moment before reluctantly agreeing. Since you're in a tight spot, I'll see what I can do. You're my brother-in-law, after all. Even though your cousin cheated on me, business is business. Kyle was effusively grateful. He signed a loan agreement and immediately went to buy his smear campaign. He didn't go after the liquor business again. Instead, he leaked a story that Crestview Private Hospital was involved in a black market surrogacy ring. That was a move I hadn't anticipated. Within an hour of the story breaking, government agencies were swarming the place. I brought my son, now fully recovered, home to the estate where my grandparents had already prepared a nursery. They'd given him a name, Noah. My poor little grandson, my grandmother said, taking Noah from my arms. Then her expression turned serious. Your divorce hearing, where you're denying paternity of both children, is that tomorrow? Harrison Vance came by, she added. We didn't see him. No need to. Olivia's crimes are criminal matters. The embezzlement can be spun as a gift. But the trafficking of our son is a fact. I helped my grandfather sit down in the living room and told him about Kyle's latest stunt. I've been wanting to get into the private healthcare sector. Crestview's location, size, and equipment are all top-notch. My cousin Michael is finding it tough working under my uncle at the public hospital. Let's give him a chance to shine at a private one. I'd already acquired about 10% of Crestview's shares. Kyle's expose was a godsend. I also now held 35% of Keystone Logistics. With a little more effort, I could become the majority shareholder. It wasn't time yet. I had to wait. My grandfather didn't object, but his tone was graver than usual. With Crestview, you can afford to wait. Let them come to you, begging you to save them. I understood immediately and nodded with a smile. Make a profit, but look like the hero doing it. The divorce proceedings were a foregone conclusion. We had the prenuptial agreement and the supplemental contract. The main point of contention in court was the formal disavowal of my parental relationship with Olivia's biological children, the twins. The judge was fair, given that I was completely unaware of the surrogacy and that Olivia was complicit in the trafficking of my son. Even if she didn't profit from it, the court ruled that no legal parental relationship existed between Olivia and the twins. The moment she received the verdict, Olivia tore it to shreds. Her eyes, cold and venomous, locked onto mine. They still have my DNA. You better watch them closely. Every child yearns for a mother's love. Julian, I'll be waiting for the day they stab you in the back. I carefully folded my copy of the verdict. I hope you get the chance to see it, I said with a smile. Vance Holdings is about to go bankrupt, by the way. I'm sure you didn't know that, I added. Harrison had surely visited her in jail. He would have told her about the company's impending collapse. There were far too many people in the Vance family who wanted Olivia gone for good, especially Kyle. A desperate gambler will sell anything. After collaborating with an investment firm to buy the smear campaign against Crestview, Kyle collected his commission and flew to Macau that night. His cousin and close friend, Ryan Vance, took a page out of his book. He targeted Keystone Logistics, reporting them for involvement in smuggling and even providing evidence. I wasn't sure if the evidence was real or fabricated, but I used the ensuing chaos to acquire more shares, quietly becoming the largest shareholder. Harrison was being pulled in a dozen different directions. I stayed in the background, waiting to pick up assets at bargain prices, occasionally providing financial support to the remaining, still scheming cousins. When the twins, Lily and Noah, were 100 days old, my grandparents and I took them to get their birth certificates registered and held a small celebration. Harrison didn't come, but he called. I'm not going to save Olivia, he said, and I won't acknowledge the children either. You don't have to worry. I paused, then chuckled. Why would I be worried? The bankruptcy of Vance Holdings has nothing to do with me. I didn't even ask my bank to call on your loans. Your own family ran the company into the ground. Harrison hung up on me. He didn't come to the celebration, and neither did any of the other Vances. They were too busy. It seemed Harrison had given up on saving the company. In the end, he only managed to hold on to 2 of the family's distilleries. The rest of their businesses were either declared bankrupt or sold off. His iron fist finally came down on the rest of the family. As per his grandfather's will, their access to the family trust was revoked, and the properties they had inherited were reclaimed. I heard the wailing from the Vance estate could be heard for blocks. I resisted the urge to go watch. When the twins were 6 months old, the verdicts for Leo and Olivia came down. Leo was sentenced to 20 years in prison and fined over $20 million. Olivia was sentenced to 5 years. Harrison, despite his words, had managed to get the embezzlement charges dismissed as a marital asset transfer. Over the past 6 months, the Caldwell Corporation had undergone a significant restructuring. Our assets and industrial reach had expanded considerably. I formally declare my intention to never remarry to my grandfather. Olivia is in prison. She's not dead. When she gets out, there's no guarantee she won't try to poison the children's minds against me. And from the sound of it, Harrison has no intention of shipping her off to another country. I won't remarry, at least not before Olivia is released. My grandfather was so angry he looked like he might hit me with his cane. I see it now. You wanted to use a surrogate from the very beginning, didn't you, you little schemer? You even planned this around me. I scooped up the twins and made a quick retreat. I swear, I had never planned to deceive my grandfather. A stepmother often leads to a distant father. I couldn't be sure I could treat all children equally, so the best solution was to eliminate the possibility from the start. I could have girlfriends anytime. A second marriage was out of the question. It wasn't like I was short on heirs. In a blink, the twins turned 1. My grandfather threw a big first birthday party for them. During the party, we laid out several items for them to choose from, a playful tradition to guess their future paths. Both Lily and Noah grabbed for the antique abacus. My grandfather was overjoyed. My 10-year-old brother was also thrilled. He had no desire to inherit the family business either. Olivia contacted me through a guard at the prison, asking to see me. I refused. My children didn't need a mother like her. Her life and mine had diverged the moment she decided to have a child with Leo Hayes. And in a way, I had her to thank. If it weren't for her betrayal, swallowing Vance Holdings whole would have been a much more difficult task. Better yet, she gave me a perfect pair of twins.